The video you're going to watch was recorded before Pope Francis passed away. In this video, Father Murr is going to share insights on what happened during the papal conclaves of the elections of Pope John Paul I and Pope John Paul II. You'll see a lot of insights in listening to his memories of those particular papal conclaves and then think about the election with Pope Leo XIV. I hope you enjoy the video, and please pray for the repose of the soul of Pope Francis and for the pontificate of Pope Leo XIV. God bless you. Praise be Jesus and Mary. Welcome to Fatima Today, the show that looks at current events through the lens of the Fatima message. Today we are thrilled to have with us Father Charles Murr, who wrote a book, Murder in the 33rd Degree, which presents Cardinal Gagnon's investigation of Freemasonry in the Vatican. We are sure you're going to want to hear this interview, so please stay tuned. This is Fatima Today with Monique Krowecki. Today, I have a guest that I'm very excited to interview, Father Charles Murr, who wrote the book Murder in the 33rd Degree, as well as other books, which are all very interesting. And Father has a new book that he has just released, which we will talk about at the end of the show as well. So Father Murr has been a Catholic priest for 48 years, this May 13th, as he was ordained May 13th, 1977, on the Feast of Our Lady of Fatima. Before and after his ordination, he studied and worked in Rome. Father Murr was a special aide to Edward Cardinal Gagnon and was a friend and observer of Cardinal Gagnon's official investigation of Freemasonry in the Vatican, which took 3 years, including Cardinal Gagnon's deliveries of that report to the popes in 1978, the year of the 3 popes. He is the sole survivor of the trio of Monsignor Mario Marini, Cardinal Edward Gagnon, and himself, who were friends and lived together in the Lebanese residence in Rome. He knows who the main Vatican prelates were, who were making decisions in the Vatican during the 1970s, and he gives us great insight as to how liberal bishops gained power in the church. We at the Fatima Center talk about the infiltration of the church by communists and Freemasons, but Father explains who some of the people were and how they were successful. I urge everyone to read Father Murr's book in order to understand the situation that the church finds itself in today. Welcome, Father Murr, to Fatima Today.
Thank you very much, Monique. Thank you for the invitation and for the introduction. Beautiful.
You're very welcome. So your book, Murder in the 33rd Degree, is about Cardinal Gagnon's investigation into Freemasonry in the church. And this was done at the request of Pope Paul VI, or was it Cardinal Benelli?
It was done at the request of the Pope in 1974, actually. He requested this. He requested it of Archbishop Benelli. Archbishop Benelli was Pope Paul VI. We're talking about the pontificate of Papa Montini, Pope Paul VI. So in 1974, the Pope had as his private secretary Giovanni Benelli, a bishop who had been his private secretary for years and a man of his complete confidence. Let's go back to 1972. The Pope in 1972 made a very odd comment on the feast of Saint Peter and Paul. He said during his discourse that the smoke of Satan has entered through some fissure into the sanctuary of the Lord. Right? I think that this, if I had to pinpoint, Monique, if I had to pinpoint a change in attitude of Pope Paul VI, it would be at that point. He woke up, or was waking up, let's put it that way, to the reality of the church's situation after Vatican II. Right. It's a little bit difficult for people to understand what it was to live as a Catholic in those years, from 1962 to 1972. the 10 years, the council, the council that lasted for 3 years, and then the years consequent to that. I was just trying to explain it to somebody today. It was a strange period because we were all hopeful. Now you could say hopeful for what? And that's an excellent question because I don't know what we were hopeful about. I'm serious. I'm serious. We were hopeful that there were going to be these mass conversions of Protestants that were all going to become Catholics, of Jews that were all going to become Catholics, of this, of that. It was all going to be one church, and the one church was going to be the Holy Roman Catholic Church and apostolic. Let's not forget that, Mark. All right.
Right.
All of
Right.
those, that's what it was going to be. Well, it turned out not to be that way. And by 1972, you could see that that was not the direction it was headed. It was headed in the direction of conflict,
That
not in this wonderful harmony and everything is just glorious. No, we were in for hard times, and I think that's when Pope Paul VI woke up to that reality. Okay, it took a while for him to wake up to that reality because he also was swept up in that great hope that the council was going to bring, and did not, and did not. Now, I'm not blaming the council either. Let's be careful here. I'm not blaming the council. There are many things in the Second Vatican Council which are beautiful. I've read all of the documents and studied them. There are many things, however, that are incredibly ambiguous
yes.
and that really need to be addressed, and they have not been addressed yet. All right? Now, in 1972, I believe that Pope Paul VI woke up to that reality. He was seeing that things were not so wonderful. By 1975, just to give you an example, and I use this because it calls your attention to what was happening. By 1975, we had lost over 500,000 Catholic nuns.
Wow.
That's a half a million nuns. Sisters left their vows, left their convents. We started closing schools. Catholic schools were closing all over the place. Catholic hospitals were closing, everything. Because these poor women who were so magnificent, they were so magnificent in their witness, in their lives to the life of the church, to Jesus Christ. The witness that they gave to Christ was fantastic. They lost their way, and they didn't lose their way by themselves. They had
Right.
spiritual directors and retreat directors, this, that, and the other, who lost the way for them and threw them into crisis. Anyway, a half a million had already left. 10,000 by 1975, 10,000 Jesuits of the 30,000 Jesuits had left.
Wow.
10,000. All right, so this is all hitting home now. This is what I'm saying. Now it's becoming clear that things are not going to be hunky dory. Right?
Yeah.
They're not. We're in trouble. This is when Pope Paul VI started waking up, and I would say, as we talk about the liberal period of Pope Pius IX, right? He was
Yes.
liberal until they tried to kill him,
Yeah.
and then his liberal period ended.
Right.
I would say that this is the liberal period of Pope Paul VI ended around 1972. He started waking up to what was really happening. And in 1974, he called for an investigation of his own government.
Wow.
And his own government is called the Roman Curia. Right? The Roman Curia, just so people understand, is all of the central government of the Catholic Church. Now, today, under Pope Francis, it's almost being dismantled, this government, which is that's a whole nother subject. But in
Yeah.
those days, it was quite established, and in those days, it had become infiltrated. It had
Yes.
become infiltrated, and Pope Paul VI wanted some answers. So he asked Benelli, who was at that time, later on he's Cardinal Benelli, but at this time he's Bishop Benelli,
Okay.
his secretary, for a suggestion who could lead an investigation into the Roman Curia. And Benelli suggested Bishop Gagnon, he was the rector of the Pontifical Canadian College in Rome. A brilliant man, very good sense of humor, very good sense of humor. Loved to sing, at ease with people. You just when you met him, you loved him.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of
Yeah.
the he's one of those people that I don't think he had an enemy in life. He was just a very easygoing person. But there was no question about his Catholic faith. There was no question of that. It was straight on. He never wavered on anything in the faith at all. So the Pope called him in and asked him to to take over the investigation of the entire Roman Curia. So we're talking approximately of 800 people.
Wow.
And it was an investigation that lasted for 3 years. And this is what Gagnon did for 3 years in Rome. He spoke to everyone, investigated everything thoroughly, thoroughly. When he had his investigation finished, let me put it this way, about halfway through, he started receiving death threats. His offices were broken into. His room at the Canadian College, his rooms were ransacked. Again, more death threats. And Monsignor Mario Marini and I, who were very good friends, were also
Okay.
very good friends of Gagnon, of Bishop Gagnon. As a matter of fact, he preached at my ordination in Rome.
Oh, wow.
And so we suggested that he come live with us. And if you read the book, I'm not going to get into the why because that's a whole other story, but there was a good reason for coming to live with us. We lived in the most secure building of Europe at that time because of a house guest we had, right? We
Yes.
had through
Yes.
security and there were armed guards and it was unbelievable. Anyway, so he moved in with us. So the three of us, we became very good friends, the three of us, going out for coffee together, walking together, relaxing after dinner together, talking. And so I got to know Gagnon very, very, very well. And we developed a great relationship. He asked me when he had finished his investigation, could I drive him to the audience with Pope Paul VI to give the Pope the documentation, all the documentation of that visit? And of course, I said yes. I drove him that morning to his audience with the Pope in San Damaso. We were there. He took the files that he had, which were all very much organized, and brought them up to the top floor of the papal residence and met with the Pope. He
Mm.
handed the Pope these documents, and he was concerned, and he told the Pope, this is in the audience, just the two of them sitting face to face at the Pope's desk. He handed him the documentation and he said, there are some points that are urgent to be made, Holy Father. One of them was that Cardinal Baggio of the Congregation of Bishops be replaced immediately.
Hmm.
We'll get into that a little bit later on.
Okay.
The other one was the Vatican Bank.
Mm.
And Gagnon told him that the Vatican Bank was about to explode in scandal. This is 1978.
Okay.
When the
Wow.
Vatican Bank exploded in scandal was in about 1980,
Wow.
1981. So this is 2 years before that. He's telling the Pope there is something very, very wrong with there are many things very wrong. And he had identified what they were, who was responsible, everything else. He did a fantastic job. He handed all of this and much, much more, much, much more. There were people who were in the Vatican in higher places that should not have been anywhere near the Vatican, and they were involved in decision making. He had their names and the charges that he brought against them. He handed all of this to the Pope, put it on his desk, and the Pope, with that time, was very elderly. There's something else too, just in the psychology of the man.
Okay.
He lost a very, very, very dear friend one of the best friends he had in his life, Aldo Moro, who was the prime minister of Italy, was kidnapped by the Red Brigade at that time, tortured and murdered, and his body was thrown out onto the streets of Rome.
Wow.
Almost did end the Pope. It really affected. I never heard anybody do this except for this. He got up. I think it was at the Angelus in St. Peter's Square, and addressed the Red Brigade. They were communist militants who had kidnapped Aldo Moro, and he offered his own life for Aldo Moro to be returned. Right,
Oh,
and he was sincere. He was very sincere about it.
yeah.
He really loved Aldo Moro as a political thinker, as a Christian, a Catholic, and the direction he wanted to take Italy and Europe. And anyway, with the brutal death, I might add, of Aldo Moro, the Pope's whole his energy was spent. Was just He wasn't there anymore. Just wasn't there. Anyway, what the Pope did after he listened to Cardinal Gagnon, or Bishop Gagnon at that time, he took all of the documents and pushed them back in the direction of Gagnon and said to him, I can't deal with this. Leave it for my successor.
I can only imagine how disappointed
Gagnon
Cardinal.
came back down to the car with the files, right? Very disappointed. And to cut a long story short, that must have been in I believe April or May of 1978, and the Pope died on August 6th, 1978.
Mm.
So he was right. He didn't have the energy, he didn't have the courage either. He just gave up. Right.
Right.
I think, as a matter of fact, my personal opinion, I think he was happy to die. I think he was happy to
Mm.
die and to get on with the rest of his life, where in eternity, and just leave
Right.
this mess. Anyway, that happened. Then we had the election of the new pope, and Gagnon and Mario Marini, and we spoke freely of who the next pope was going to be, and it
Mhm.
was already decided it was going to be either Luciani, and if Luciani wasn't voted in, it would be Wojtyła. Those were the
Wow.
two choices. I had never heard of Wojtyła. I didn't know if Wojtyła was something you ate with jam and bread, or Wojtyła. What is Wojtyła? What is this? A Polish man, Archbishop Cardinal oh, for
Krakow?
goodness sake, of
Krakow?
Krakow. Yes, I was going to say Warsaw, but of course not. Krakow. But anyway, they went into the election, and without getting into all of that, that's also in the book if people want to read it,
Mm.
how the election happened. Eventually, Cardinal Luciani won. He took the name John Paul I. But something very important happened also. The election was between Cardinal Siri of Genoa
Mhm.
and a man by the name of Sebastian Baggio, Cardinal Sebastian Baggio, who was for the Congregation of
Mm.
Bishops. This was a bad man. He was accused of being Freemason. The documentation was brought to the Pope. It was part of Gagnon's investigation. Gagnon and Benelli had internet do all of the research on it, and they found that he was, in fact, a lodge member. So you've got Monique, if you can imagine this. You've got the man who is in charge of naming the bishops of the entire world a Freemason,
Gosh.
right? So this is where we were. Now,
Yeah.
nobody knew that at this time,
Right.
except Gagnon. Well, Gagnon, Marini, and myself, we all talked about it because it was there, right? Uh,
Yes.
a lot of things had to change. One of the first things that had to change. I don't want to get lost in the weeds over here with the election. As I
Okay.
say, you can read that in my book if you want to.
Okay.
But John Paul I was elected. The first point of business he wanted a new Secretary of State. And he asked Cardinal Benelli. At this time, Benelli, who was secretary to Pope Paul VI, is now a cardinal, the Cardinal of Florence. And it was Benelli who was responsible for the outcome of the election of the
Oh,
new Pope,
okay.
of Pope John Paul I. Right, the two of them were
Interesting.
friends. He put all of his own votes. He threw them to Luciani, so that Baggio, Cardinal Baggio, had not a real chance of winning. This was, I mean, we almost had a Freemason Pope.
Oh my goodness. Oh my
Yes, I mean,
goodness.
it came very close to that, right? Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh my goodness, too. My
Yeah.
goodness, too. Yeah. The the it was touch and go there for a while during the election, and that's when Benelli came in, presented Luciani as a candidate, and gave him his own votes. That changed the whole thing, and he won.
Now, Father, I hate to interrupt you, but I just want to make clear to our audience. So there was people who wanted to vote for more traditional leaning pope, and then there were the people who wanted the Freemasons, and then there were and so was Benelli part of the more conservative traditional group,
I
or
would say this. I would say this. If we have to use terms for people to understand, and I can
yeah,
understand that we do,
right,
you had Cardinal Siri of Genoa, who was the traditionalist candidate.
okay,
He was a very strong man and a very capable one, and he would have made a fantastic pope.
okay,
There's no question of it.
yeah,
Um, you had Cardinal Baggio presenting himself as a very conservative man. Oh, the Opus Dei loved him. He courted the Opus
mm,
Dei, the Legionnaires of Christ, all of
oh,
this. They loved him.
yeah,
But he was not. He was not a conservative man. He was not at all a conservative man. And the proof was in the pudding. The proof was in all of the bishops that he approved, the priests that he took to become bishops. And something that's very important too, Monique, don't forget this. Many of the men who were in that election for the new pope, he made archbishops of their diocese. In other words, he was responsible for them being named cardinals. So he had a group already loyal to himself. Besides, on his summer vacations, he used to go visit cardinals in Asia and in Africa, at different places of the world where they wouldn't know a lot of people in Rome. When they got to Rome for anything,
oh,
they knew him. He was their friend in Rome.
oh, he was
Yes,
setting up his network.
you know it. Yes, I think that's what it's called. Yeah. There's a little bit of politicking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was to not permit him to win. Benelli took what I call pulled a rabbit from his hat, and that was Pope John Paul I. Pope John Paul I, after he was elected, asked Benelli to be his Secretary of State, which would have been also a fantastic combination, the two of them working together. Benelli was a conservative. He was not a traditionalist.
Okay.
Okay, if
Yeah.
you want to talk about traditionalists, that was Cardinal Siri,
Okay.
right? He didn't have enough votes, however, to be elected. He was a very strong candidate, but not enough to be elected. You've got Benelli, who is conservative, religiously and politically conservative. And you've got Baggio. These were the three candidates. Baggio, Cardinal Baggio, Sebastian Baggio, who was pretending to be very conservative.
Hmm.
Right. So we've got the real liberal, the conservative, and the traditional, right?
Yes.
And who won was the conservative. Okay, good. And a good man was Pope John Paul I. He wanted Benelli to be his Secretary of State. And Cardinal Benelli said he accepted on one condition, that he, the new Pope, get rid of Cardinal Baggio ASAP. All right?
Good.
Because Benelli also knew the results of Gagnon's investigation,
Oh, okay.
right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. So, and he knew very well what he was talking about. And so Badger had to get, and the Pope, you don't remember because you're too young,
Hmm.
but the Pope John Paul I was a very shy man. He really
Oh,
was a
okay.
shy man. He was a humble man, naturally humble, and he was shy. He was timid. He was
Oh,
not gung ho and no, no, no. You know,
yeah.
I think his smile. People talking, they refer to him as the smiling Pope. I think
Mm.
his smile was his shyness.
Mm.
That was his mechanism. He was
Okay.
shy. Anyway, he and Benelli would have made a fantastic team. They really would.
I believe it.
And so John Paul I said to Benelli, "Why don't you get rid of him? Get rid of Baggio when you're Secretary of State. You can do it." And Benelli said, "No, you have to do that, Holiness, as your first act as Pope. People have
Right.
to see, and the Curia and the whole church has to see your determination to clean house."
Yes.
All right. So he did that. Now, I'm not going to go into what happened.
Okay.
I'll just say this: it's in the book if people want to read it, and if you don't want to read it, there are 100 other interviews that I've done on this question. But he was called in at night, late at night, and he had a meeting with the Pope, and he refused the Pope's offer. The Pope offered him Venice. Why Venice? Because Venice was empty, the seat of Venice. Why was it empty? Because it was the Pope's. It
Okay.
was his when he was cardinal, and he's elected. So now there's no one there. Go
Yes.
there. It's a patriarchy. It's for an archbishop patriarch and a cardinal. I mean, so
Okay.
it's right.
Yeah.
This is what, and again, here's another. We get to another question that a lot of people don't understand, and I understand it, but I reject it.
Okay.
Right? The Vatican, until very recently, and we have to be careful that they don't fall back into that. Until very recently, any bishop, and of course cardinals, who was accused of anything wrong, any wrongdoing, was transferred.
Oh,
Right? No disciplinary action was taken against them. This is the
wow.
old boys club,
Yeah.
the good old boys, right? This is we talk about the good old boys club. Well, this is it in Rome, right?
Right.
And when they had to get rid of somebody, that person was promoted. Right? Monique. There was a book that I read years ago in a sociology course. It's called The Peter Principle. You should read it. You'd like it. You'd like it.
Okay.
It,
Okay.
it I think its basic its basic teaching was that everyone raises to his highest degree of incompetence in any job. and, and until you keep getting promoted until you've reached the highest degree of your incompetence, right? Well, the Vatican did this. They promoted people to get rid of them. So you've got these people who really they shouldn't have been promoted. They should have been demoted, if anything.
Mhm.
But they were
Mhm.
promoted. We saw this in the case of McCarrick, for example. Right?
Oh my
It's
goodness.
exactly it. Rather than the man should have, and he should have been wise enough too, to just say, sit home and shut up. But Pope Francis called him to negotiate the deal with the communist Chinese. Out of retirement, he took him. Well, that was too much for people. It was
Yeah.
too much, right? And that's where it hit. But this is what happens. This is what happens. So I'm going all over the place. I'm sorry with this,
No,
but
it's okay. Is that like Vatican diplomacy? Is that
yeah,
is
that's
that how?
exactly what it is. That's a nice way to call it. Yes.
Okay.
It's,
Okay.
and they've been around. This has been going on for I don't know 1,500 years,
Wow.
right? This was the makeup of things, and you always had, especially in European society, we struggle as Americans and Canadians to understand it, but European society always had a special class The nobles were a class. The clergy was its own class.
Right.
The clergy was not judged in civil courts. Right? This is something new. They were judged in clerical courts. The church judged them. Well, you can imagine what a just judgment they're going to get at a just hearing. They've got friends here. They've got friends there. It was a mess. And this is what we're dealing with. So anyway, they were going to promote Baggio to get him out of the congregation for bishops. Instead of electing all of the new bishops in the world, he would be in a place where he could be watched and not do any more harm.
Okay.
That was the idea.
Right.
Well, he was called to a meeting. He went. This is the night that the Pope died.
Okay.
Right? He went to a meeting, a private meeting with the Pope in the papal studio, in his study. And this was proposed that he take Venice, that he go to Venice. Absolutely not. And Baggio was quite vocal in that. We know because there were Swiss guards listening outside the door. They weren't listening to the conversation, but you can certainly hear when somebody's raised his voice. Right?
Yes.
Anyway, that went on. Baggio left, and the Pope died a matter of hours later. How many hours, I don't know. Of a heart attack. I don't believe that he was poisoned. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe I don't believe anything else other than they had a heart attack and died. But I do believe that somebody caused that heart attack.
Okay.
Can you imagine insulting the Pope? This is the Pope of Rome, telling you to go somewhere else because you're not trustworthy, and insulting him by saying, "I'm not leaving. I'm not going anywhere." And who do you think? And this is my imagination, but I can hear Baggio saying it because he was a nasty person.
Okay.
Who do you think you are? I made you a cardinal. You're a cardinal patriarch because of me. I put you in Venice, and now you're telling me what I'm going to do? No. So he refused. He refused.
That's unbelievable because I always thought that you had to go wherever you were sent, like that vow of obedience.
Well,
you just had to.
The soldiers do, not the generals.
Oh, I see.
So, you see, no, no, little girl, no, little girl, no. Doesn't work that way. Yeah, the generals, they think differently, and they live by a different code. So he did not go. The Pope died three, maybe four, 5 hours at the most later of a heart attack. He did not have the imitation of Christ in his hands, which was first reported that the Holy Father died. See, this is a crazy thing the Vatican does too. Just tell the truth. Just tell the truth. My grandmother caught me in a lie when I was, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old. I think I ate cookies and said I didn't or something like that. And of course, I've got the crumbs and the jelly and everything all over it. It's obvious. But I remember she sat me down. She said, if you're going to be a good liar, Charlie, you've got to develop your memory. If you don't have a developed memory, don't take up lying because you can't. They'll get you. They'll find you. And it's true. It's true. Well, that's what happened here. That's what happened here. They started making up stories. The Pope died reading I'll never forget it. I woke up at like 7:00, 7:30 the next morning, and there was already news on Vatican radio, and all of Rome knew about it. And that he had died reading the Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis. And so it's this wonderful, pious death. Fine, but it didn't happen that way. He died with some sheets of paper in his hands.
Oh.
Those were people who worked in the Roman Curia, where they're going to be changed and who should be where and who should be what. And that's what he died with. Those sheets of paper were there. There were at least 2 sheets of paper. And he was with a pencil or a pen or something, doodling and scribbling and making changes and this and the other. That's what he was working on with his
Interesting.
glasses on. Right? No, we
Oh,
can't say that. No, we can't say that. No, no. He had to be reading the Imitation of Christ. And of course, then people find out, well, that wasn't it. It was this. Well, what does that do, Monique? That opens everything up to being questioned.
yeah.
How did he
Absolutely.
die?
Yeah.
What by what means? Well, you said that he died of a heart attack. Now we don't believe that. You also said he died reading the Imitation of Christ. You changed that. So why wouldn't you change this? This is what happens. This is what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
Anyway, there was no autopsy. There was no autopsy. There should have been. Uh,
Yes.
it's all of this, and it's because the Vatican is its own. It's its own city state. It's its own kingdom, and it has its own laws. So they can pretty much do, but not pretty much. They can do just about anything they want. It's their own country. We're right back to the same place afterwards. The same election is taking place. The same election with the same electors minus one.
Right.
Again, Baggio is jockeying for first place. And the problem with Siri, this is the problem that some of us traditionalists have. Let me just tell you. And you're going to
Okay.
smile at this because you've dealt with many of a traditionalist who is not completely sensible. Let me just put it that way. Instead of, yes, I know I'm causing you to laugh because you're laughing at the truth of it. And
Yes.
the thing is this, sometimes traditionalists, hardcore, and liberals, hardcore,
Okay.
would cut off their nose to spite their face. They would, right? And I'm right, and that's all there is to it. And it's all right. Well, the problem was with Cardinal Siri, and I love Siri. Siri's a very good man who would have made an excellent pope. As I have so many questions for our Lord when I see him, and one of them is why he didn't win the election, but he didn't have enough votes. But Siri refused. Siri is not moving. He's got a block of votes who are voting, men who are voting for him, and he's not moving. He's not going to give up one of those votes, and he's not going to support another candidate. The votes have to be taken away from him, not given.
Oh,
There's
okay.
give and take, right?
Right.
He's holding this, and I understand him. I'm not criticizing that,
Hmm.
but that's
Hmm.
the way it is. Well, the problem is with that, Cardinal Baggio, the Freemason, is gaining votes. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and you've got Benelli over here who understands we cannot possibly have a Freemason as Pope.
Right.
So Benelli pulls another rabbit out of another hat, and that man's name was Wojtyła, Cardinal Wojtyła from Poland.
Wow.
That was Benelli's choice. He proposed him and he won. Right? Good.
Yeah.
Now, oh wait, I failed to tell you that I drove Cardinal Gagnon,
Yes.
Archbishop Gagnon, to see John Paul I
Right.
about a week before he died, maybe a little bit more, with the documentation, and he took the documentation and he read it. And this was what he was trying to do was clean house
Yes.
with that documentation, with that 3-year study of the Roman Curia, with perfect roadmap for doing that.
Sure.
And that's what he was doing. That's exactly what he was doing. His death prevented anything from going ahead. Then we go to see, Gagnon says to me, "What are you doing tomorrow morning?" I said, what do you want to do? He said, "Can you take me to see Pope John Paul II, the new Pope?" But in the case of John Paul II, it took months before he would see Gagnon. The other two wanted to see him immediately. But
Hmm.
John Paul, he didn't care. He
Hmm.
really didn't care because he had, and not because he was a bad man. I'm not saying that at all. It's his priorities were different. His priorities were he was going to convert the world.
Oh.
He was going to travel and he was going to convert the world and call everyone to Christ, and we were all going to be wonderful and happy and this and the other thing. Well, the first trip he decided to take was to Mexico. So for the first months of his pontificate, he's studying Spanish, learning everything he can about Mexico, getting speeches ready, this, that, and the other thing. And every one of those papal trips that he took, and he took 104 of them, every one of them required at least 2 or 3 months of preparation.
Wow.
This is
Yeah.
this is in between being pope.
Yeah.
This is your study time. This is what you do in your free time. Study the language, be able to give discourses in the language of the country you're going to, understand how many dioceses there are, who the bishops are, how many hospitals there are, Catholic seminaries, students, have all of this in your head to go visit. You don't just get on a plane and say, here I am.
Right.
Well, he dedicated all of his time to these trips. And the first trip was to Mexico, and it was going to be historic. And it was historic. It was like something nobody's ever seen before,
Yeah.
especially with the Mexican government, who are Freemasons. They were Freemasons at that time. To have a pope come,
Yeah.
this was unbelievable. And
That was
what
big.
what I was laughing about, I remember saying to Mario Marini, we saw the pictures of the millions and millions of people who turned out for the Pope. I said, the PRI, the Partido Revolucionario Industrial, the Freemason Party of Mexico.
Okay.
Do you know that you had to be a Freemason to be a governor or a president of Mexico? You
Wow.
had to be a Freemason. It wasn't an option, right? Well, I said they might have figured out who's running the government, but they also, with Pope John Paul II going there, they also found out who was the emperor of Mexico. There was no question of that. There was no question of that, and that's what they were scared of. That's what they were scared
Yes.
of. See. Well,
Yes.
anyway, he came back. He came back from the Mexico trip and met with Gagnon, and he was not particularly interested. I know. I drove Gagnon to that audience and waited for him and drove him back home. He simply said, he was going to take his time. He was going to take him time. Gagnon left the documentation there, the study, left it with him, but there was nothing going to happen. And Gagnon pleaded with him of the urgency of changing things around ASAP
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Uh, well, well, we will see. We will see. That kind of thing. Well, Gagnon came back down to the car, and I'm waiting at the Cortile San Damaso by the elevator to take him back home. And I could see when he got out of the elevator, he was like a tomato, red, angry. And
Mm.
I'd never seen him. I've seen him upset, but I never saw him angry. He was angry. He got into the car, and we didn't speak for 5 minutes. Just to he had to come down from that anger level. When
Yeah.
he did speak, he said, "What are you doing the day after tomorrow?" I said, "What would you like me to do?" He said, "Take me to the airport. I'm handing in my resignation.
Mm.
I can't deal with this anymore." He said, "I don't know how anybody can deal with this anymore." And he did. He did. I took him to the airport 2 days later. He also told John Paul II, he told him that he had a Freemason naming all of the bishops of the world. He told him that the Vatican Bank was going to explode with scandal. He
Yeah.
told him. And he told him who the responsible parties were. He
Oh,
told him there was a Freemasonic takeover of the Vatican Bank to collapse the Vatican's finances. Now, this sounds insane. Doesn't this sound insane? This would be too crazy. This would be too crazy for anyone in Hollywood to do a movie on. They
yeah.
wouldn't
It
believe
would have
you.
it would have sounded insane back then for sure. Not so
Yes,
much
yes,
today.
yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
but when you talk about conspiracies, this was a full blown
Yeah.
happening, but it sounded like too crazy to be anything but a conspiracy thing. Well, it wasn't. It wasn't crazy at all.
Yeah.
And he also told the Holy Father one last thing. He told him about Baggio. There were many things that had to be changed, but these are the main things. He told him about the Vatican Bank, that the Freemasons were taking it over to bankrupt church finances and to collapse the Vatican, right?
Wow.
And he told them who it was. It was P2, Propaganda 2. Propaganda 2 was the Italian lodge, the strongest lodge of Freemasons in Italy.
Wow.
And he gave them names. right? He had all of the documentation. It was done.
Yeah.
And then he told John Paul II one last thing. He said, and there's a plot to kill you, Holy Father. And the Pope, you know what his answer was? Gagnon told me this himself. He said, who would want to kill the Pope of Rome? Who would
So
want to kill the
naive.
Pope of Rome? I mean, amazing, amazing. And
That's fun.
he was a brilliant man. There's no question. He was a brilliant man. He had an extraordinary mind. But that was that.
He was
Gagnon
too
left.
kind.
2 days later, I drove Gagnon to the airport, and he returned to Colombia for a while, and that was it. He said better the jungles of Colombia than the jungles here.
I don't
That's it.
blame him.
He said all I ever wanted to do was be a priest, a
Yeah.
missionary priest in wherever they sent me. Right? He taught
Yeah.
seminary. That's it. Well, when the Holy Father received received bullets on the 13th of May, 1981, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yes.
He went to the hospital, almost died.
Yeah.
I've told this too. He did not almost die of the bullet wounds. He almost died of contaminated blood given to him in transferals, right?
Oh, that's interesting.
The contaminated blood that they gave him hepatitis. So now the Pope has hepatitis on top of the bullets and the wounds that he's got to internal organs.
Okay.
Incredible. They put him in. He was in coma. They say I was not there to hear this, and I underscore that. But I've heard tell that when he came to, and this was said all over Rome, the first words out of his mouth were, "Find Gagnon."
Now he'll listen to him.
Yeah, right. Now it's time we're going to call back. Well, he found Gagnon, and
Okay.
by order of the Pope ordered him back to Rome, and Gagnon went back to Rome, talked to the Pope quite openly, and took the committee for the family, which he was appointed to, and remained part of the Roman Curia. And but Cardinal Gagnon said, he was Archbishop Gagnon at that time.
Okay.
The Pope said, come back and help me. This, that, and the other. He said, I will come back and work for you here in the Vatican. Do whatever you want, as soon as you get rid of Baggio.
Yes.
That is, he said, that has to be done. Well, the Pope did finally, but it took until 1984.
Wow.
Right? But he finally got rid of Baggio, and Baggio was not retirement age. It wasn't that. He got rid of Baggio and put him in charge of Vatican stamps. Put him in charge of Vatican stamps. That's good. I think it was. I don't know if it was Pius the Ninth or Pius the Tenth. I think maybe Pius the Tenth. He had two cardinals who were enemies, who were political enemies, and he never let them. Take archdiocese over here or a position outside. They were always in front of him when he was on the Sedia Gestitoria in procession. The two cardinals. And someone asked him, Holy Father, if these two irritate you so much, why are they always? He said, I'm watching them. I'm watching them. Right.
Right.
So,
Right.
so, so,
Wise.
so this time, Baggio was not appointed to Venice or no. In charge of Vatican stamps. You do the stamps. Yeah, we'll watch you from there.
Wow.
So anyway, it looked as though things were getting better. And the Pope had asked then, he asked, you're not going to believe this. It sounds like you're making it up. He asked Cardinal Benelli from Florence,
Yay.
right, to come back to the Vatican to be his Secretary of State. Benelli agreed. And 10 days later, a 61-year-old, very healthy Benelli died of a heart attack.
Mm.
Everyone's dying of heart attacks all over the place.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
strangest times. Anyway, that was the end of Cardinal Benelli. And Gagnon remained in Rome and did all that he could to better the situation. But what should have been done was a thorough housekeeping, a house cleaning, excuse me.
Hmm.
And it was not done.
Yeah.
It was not done. Never was.
Right.
So you've got John Paul II preaching these marvelous things, and even his teaching of things was everything is wonderful, but the lack of action of cleaning up, that was the problem. Then, of course, you did have the Freemasons taking over the Vatican Bank. It's exactly as Gagnon said, and that happened in '81, and that scandal went on for years and years and years. That what saved it was Cardinal Kroll, especially Cardinal Kroll from Philadelphia, organized a number of very wealthy Americans, Canadians, some Europeans, who gave incredible amounts of money to help save the Vatican Bank, to help save the Vatican too. It's that we're going to lose the whole thing.
Wow.
I mean, when you would come down to it, what they wanted to do was bankrupt the Vatican city state, and then you would force the Vatican to start selling pietas and frescoes and Michelangelos. They wanted to destroy the Vatican, and they were very close to having done it
Sure sounds it.
because
My
people were
goodness.
asleep at the switch.
Wow.
Now
Wow.
I've talked too much, Monique. I'm going to have a drink of water.
No, no, you haven't. You haven't. I could listen to you all day. Honest to goodness, Father. I mean, I have to say, when I read your book, the part about how Cardinal Gagnon ended up in your residence, it just made me laugh so much because I just
You,
thought that was
Monique,
fantastic. And no,
you can't make this up, can you?
no, you can't. No, you can't. And I'll tell you, you know, God has such a sense of humor, honestly, because He allows all these things to happen, which are just absolutely amazing. I really encourage people to read that book. But the one thing that really struck me while you were talking, because I'm looking at everything from the lens of Fatima, of course, and I think that all of these um, people in the Vatican who were of goodwill. We're not talking about the Baggios or the Freemasons, but Pope, the popes who really thought that they could convert, whether it was the Protestants or whether Pope John Paul II wanted to convert the world. I think they're all looking at this really with using human means. Like, we're going to use diplomacy. We're going to change the mass to make it more friendly to Protestants and people of other faith, and they'll all want to join us. And they're not looking at things from more of a supernatural level, and they're certainly not looking at it from the message of Our Lady of Fatima, because the third secret was supposed to be released by 1960, and Pope John the 23rd didn't do it. He said, this is not for my pontificate, and it never came out. And then in June of 2000, they released the Sister Lucy's visions of the third secret. But today, still, they have not released the part of the third secret with Our Lady's words. And we have so many quotes from people. Obviously, nobody knows the full third secret, but we sure know a lot about it.
Let
From
me just let me just interject a question here.
sure, sure.
Do you believe that what the Vatican gave finally under the pontificate of John Paul II?
Hmm.
Do you excuse me? Was it under his pontificate or was it under Benedict, the third
No,
secret?
no, it was under Pope John Paul II, because it was
Yeah,
2000.
Sodano, Cardinal Sodano gave it, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Do you believe that that was authentic?
I don't know what to believe. I mean, I take it from the point of view that it could have been things that Sister Lucy wrote down in terms of the interpretation of the third secret. It's a possibility. I don't have anything to say otherwise. Of course, we don't trust the Vatican, so you just don't know.
That's the problem. That's the problem. That's
Yeah,
really the real
exactly.
problem, isn't it?
It
And
is.
the reason we don't trust them is because they've made themselves untrustworthy.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
not it didn't come from us.
yeah. No,
The lack of trust is not on our
exactly.
part. Yeah.
That's right. That's exactly it. And what we do know about the third secret with Our Lady's words is when I think it was the bishop, or I don't know if he was a cardinal or a bishop, but he had to send the third secret to the Vatican, and the secretary really wanted to know what it was. Of course, he couldn't see it, but he held it up to the light. Okay, this envelope, and he saw that it was about 2/3 to 3/4 of the page, just one page. Whereas what the Vatican released in 2000 was 4 pages of notes. So the
Right.
words of Our Lady are obviously just, maybe 2/3 of 1 page long, and that has never been released. And of course, that has been vindicated because, well, the Fatima Center did started investigations, not official investigations, but they Father Gruner knew a lot of cardinals and people in the Vatican, and so it came out that the part of the third secret with Our Lady's actual words is in one part of the Vatican, and that other part that they released in 2000 is in the second part of the Vatican. And that was also verified by Antonio Socci, who was actually taking the part of the Vatican saying, "Oh no, the third secret's been released." And when Father Gruner used to drive around Rome with a billboard on the top of a car or vehicle, "Holy Father, release the full third secret," or "Holy Father, consecrate Russia," and he would take out ads in L'Osservatore Romano and everything. So Antonio Socci said, "That's it. I'm going to prove this priest wrong, and I'm going to do a thorough investigation." And he ended up talking to people that the Fatima Center had spoken to as well. And he realized, yes, there is another part to the third secret that is kept in the Vatican that has never been released, and that has Our Lady's words on it. And he wrote a book called The Fourth Secret of Fatima that documented that. So here's a mainstream Italian investigative journalist who was well respected in Rome, who said this. And then after that, he was like persona non grata in the Vatican. He used to go in all the time, do interviews, right? And so this happened. But I think really the problem is the fact that the third secret wasn't released. I think Our Lady was warning about what was going to happen in the church. Nobody listened to her.
Well,
Everybody thought that they could do their own
Monique,
thing.
let me jump in here
Sure.
and tell you. Did you read the another book that I wrote, The Godmother?
Yes.
All right. Do you remember there was one chapter that I dedicated to something very, very curious that I found very curious when Mother Pasqualina, who was Pius XII's secretary for almost 42 years, right?
Right.
She told me this herself, calmly, clearly, that we were talking about the vision that Pius XII had in if I'm not mistaken, 1954.
Okay.
The vision that he had in the Vatican gardens of the miracle of the sun. And she described, and I'll never forget it, she described in vivid detail how shaken he was when he returned to the apostolic palace after that vision. She got him a tea or some sort of something to settle his nerves, and he sat down and he explained to her what he just finished seeing. And it was a repetition of the sun dancing in the sky. And he watched this for, I don't know, five or 10 minutes. And she asked him, listen to this. She asked him, "Holy Father, was there any message attached to it?" As if seeing the sun dancing in the sky isn't enough, right? Was there a message?
Yeah.
And he said, and this is quoting her, one word: apostasy. You remember that in the book?
Yes.
That is exactly. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. And nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about it. It's not brought up. But she told me this. That was exactly it. And she said, Don Carlo. She had this Don Carlo, Don Carlo. She was in those times, 1950s. Apostasy was not a word that you kicked around.
No.
You didn't hear it.
Yeah.
It wasn't an issue, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So it wasn't a word that was commonly used. I remember hearing it when I was growing up, so that the sound, I could identify the sound of it, didn't have. Well, she went to the dictionary to look up apostasy,
Oh,
to make sure that she was understanding what he said.
yes.
And she said, yes, this was apostasy. And that's exactly what he said. And it was the one word that came out of that vision. That, the third secret, the first secret, the second secret, all that's all interesting, but it's sort of a quagmire. You've got so many people's hands in the whole thing that you don't know who to listen to and what to do. And then you've got Malachi Martin
Mm,
also with his contribution to the thing, and it's bits and pieces.
yes.
I don't need all of that. That's all interesting to me. It's interesting, but I don't need it. When I heard from Mother Pasqualina's lips herself that the only word that came out of the vision of the sun that was given to Pius XII personally in the Vatican Gardens in 1954 was apostasy.
Yeah. I know.
I
Yeah.
don't need much more. I don't need much more than that.
Yeah.
And if you can't see, not you, because you certainly can
I
see,
understand.
if
I
one
understand.
can't see, if one cannot see that that is exactly where we are today,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know how
Uh,
much clearer it can be made. I don't know.
Unfortunately, so many people don't see it. I mean, our Fatima Center viewers know about it because we've talked about it a lot. In fact, we actually did a magazine 130 all on the third secret, and we have all kinds of quotes, from Cardinal Luigi Chappi, who actually he was I think a personal papal theologian to 5 popes, and
He was
and he
the he
said,
was the theologian to many popes.
"Oh, okay,
Yeah, a Dominican. He was Cardinal Ciappi
Dominic,
was imagine Cardinal Ciappi was the Pope's theologian.
amazing,
All right, so
amazing."
that's a little bit heavy. That's a heavy
Yeah.
office. Yeah.
Yeah. And we have a quote from him where he actually says, in the third secret, it is foretold, among other things, that the great apostasy in the church will begin at the top. So, it you have to be able to see that
Begin
this is
at
what
the
we're going
top.
through.
Begin at the top. Now, what would that mean?
Yeah, exactly. The papacy. And I have to tell you, Father, for years, I mean, I was part of a homeschooling group with a bunch of conservative Catholics and a few traditional Catholics. And everybody was very easy to criticize a bishop. That bishop's bad. This bishop's bad. But they would never, 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 say anything about the Holy Father because he's the Pope, right? But when you say that the apostasy starts at the top, that was almost like the elephant in the room at the time. You couldn't say
And you're
that.
not talking about the man who cleans the streets in the Vatican Gardens, right? Yeah.
No, not at all. Not at all. So I want to ask you though, Father, what happened to Cardinal Gagnon's report after he gave
A
it to the Pope?
marvelous question. Here's an answer for you. You ready for this one?
Sure.
I'm looking for it. I'll find it. It's not impossible to find. But I remember reading a couple things. Isn't it funny how you get into something and all of a sudden, when you're not thinking about it, in another circumstance, here comes the answer. Here
Okay.
comes it,
Yes.
right? I've had that
Yes.
happen a few times in life, not often, but when it
Right.
happens, it's a colossal discovery. One of the things that I remembered while I was writing this book on the assassination, murder in the 33rd degree, while I was writing it, was that just a minute, I'm getting lost here. Sometimes you don't know, you're not old enough to understand what happens with these senior moments. They're disgusting. I hate them. but
But the
but what
report.
yes, the report. While I'm writing the book, I remember reading way back, and it came to me again that in the Observatory Romano, that the report had been stolen. Now I knew that it had. I knew that it had because Gagnon and I were friends until he died. I was at his funeral, and we vacationed together every year. He came to New York, or I went to Montreal, and we
Nice.
went. I mean, I loved the man. He was like my father, my grandfather. He was just marvelous. A saint, also a saint.
Mm.
But Gagnon told me that his own copy, when he left Rome, for Colombia, his copy he gave to uh, Cardinal Oddi of the
Okay.
Congregation for the Clergy. Cardinal Oddi was another. Cardinal Oddi was a tough bird. He was a tough guy, and he was a real believer. He was a firm believer in everything holy, and minced no words. He was, as a matter of fact, he and Cardinal Staffa were the two cardinals who went to the Pope to begin with the
Oh,
documentation on Bugnini and on Baggio, both of them, right? And
that's another interview I'd like to have.
Cardinal Staffa was head of the Segnatura Apostolica, which is the Supreme Court of the Catholic Church.
Okay.
It's not just, he wasn't just a canon lawyer. He was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the Catholic Church. He and Oddi went. Cardinal Gagnon gave Cardinal Oddi his own copy of the investigation, because he wasn't going to take it out of the Vatican. He wasn't going to take it. It wasn't his. Right?
Okay.
Cardinal Oddi put it in the safe box in the Congregation for the Clergy. His office was ransacked. The safe box was opened, and the document was gone. Now, you think I'm making this up?
No.
And I said, I hear no, but here's the thing: when I'm telling this to people who have no idea of anything, oh my God, it's almost too much. And I said, no, 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 just a minute. I remember the documentation for it. Just like I remembered this, I remembered something else too that came to me, almost like in a dream. But it's not a dream that you're having a vision, because you already know it. You've just misplaced the
Right.
memory.
Right.
Uh, I said, besides Marini, Gagnon, and Benelli, being in their company and hearing them talk about Baggio being there with the Pope hours before he died. Besides that, I read somewhere in a legitimate publication that Baggio was there. This was a secret meeting, a private meeting between Baggio and the Pope at 8 o'clock at night. I said, just a minute. Time magazine. It was Time magazine. I went back and found it in Time magazine. I found it. And Time magazine was the only report, and they only reported it one time. It was canceled in the future. They gave the schedule of the Pope that day that he died, John Paul I. And they said, and Cardinal Sebastian Baggio met with him at 8 o'clock at night in a private meeting. Bup, 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 bup. And all of a sudden, but I found the old copy. I found the copy of Time magazine. It was, I can't remember the exact date. Well, the exact date was the death of the Pope.
Yeah,
That-
1978
yeah,
sometime.
it was 1978, but it had the red shoes on the
Okay.
cover. They're just a pair of red shoes, of the Pope's red shoes, with no person in it because he had died. That was the
Right.
cover, and that's exactly where the quote was. Well, also the Observatorio Romano published the theft of the Gagnon report from Cardinal Oddi's office. They
Oh.
published it. I can't find it, and if you think it's easy to get old copies of the Observatorio Romano, I've got a bridge for you in Brooklyn. It's not easy, but it was there. They published an entire article. I read it. And now I can't find it, but it's there.
Yeah.
It was stolen from the office of Cardinal Oddi in the safe box. I'm talking about a huge, massive safe that you can't get into for love nor money. You couldn't break it. They got into it and stole only the documentation of Gagnon's investigation. That was it.
Wow.
Robert McNamara. I do a weekly program with him. He's a great man. I love him a lot. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
Robert McNamara and I almost crossed paths. I was with Gagnon and just I had just left him, and he died a few days later, and then I returned for the funeral.
Okay.
But Robert McNamara went to go see Gagnon, and he
Oh,
was with him the day before he died, hours before he died, to ask him precisely, we want a copy of that of the thing, or what happened to it. Give us some news.
yeah.
Gagnon received him because he knew him from before. They were friends from before.
Okay.
But he didn't have it, and he was hours away from dying himself, so he had other more important things to do.
Hmm.
Robert McNamara and I struck up a friendship over this question,
Oh, wow.
right over that question, because he also knew that it existed. He wanted to know where. So there are a lot of unanswered questions. I have already, having written this book, Murder in the 33rd Degree, I've contacted people in the Vatican to ask them to petition the Pope,
Yeah.
release it. It's almost
Yeah.
50 years. Most of the people are dead. As a matter of fact, I think I'm the only one still alive that would have any real knowledge of what was going on. Release it. You're releasing this. You're releasing that. You're releasing Pius XII was his war record with the Nazis and all of this nonsense. Fine. I mean, I'm calling it nonsense because Pius XII was a saint who did
Yeah.
nothing. He did nothing wrong. He did everything right to
Yeah.
save everybody. Uh,
Yeah.
but but no, not heard back from anything. No, and nobody knows where the document is. It's come on, give me a break. Anyway, this is the way, and you wonder why people have lost faith
Yeah.
in the Vatican.
Yeah.
They've lost faith. This is one of the many reasons. It's a shame. We really need to get our church back. We really
Yes, we
need to
do.
get our church back. We really do.
Yes,
It's
we do. And we know that when the consecration of Russia is done by the Pope with all the bishops of the world, that that's when the triumph of the Immaculate Heart will happen and a period of peace will be given to the world. But until that happens, this, we're going to be seeing one disappointment after another, and things are going to get worse and worse and worse as far as I'm concerned.
unfortunately, I think you're right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, people accuse the Fatima Center of being doom and gloom, and we don't want to be doom and gloom. We want to be positive. We want everybody to obey the message of Our Lady of Fatima. We need people to be making reparation on the first Saturdays for sins against the Immaculate Heart of Mary, in addition to making reparation for sins against the Sacred Heart on the first Fridays. People need to do their part so that the Pope will do his part and do the consecration. And the Pope, you know, none of this diplomatic stuff. He's got to order all of the bishops of the world to do that consecration with him. He can't invite them. He
Well,
can't
it'll
suggest
probably
he
look at
order.
it this way, Monique. Look at it this way. It'll probably be easier with less bishops. When
Well,
the
we
when
may
the
have
when
that
the
if we have
apostasy,
World
when
War
the
III.
apostasy comes, it will probably be easier with less bishops to contend with.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can see that, Father. And if the Freemasons have said they need 3 world wars to get the world where they want, and if that's where we're headed, then we may have less bishops, and the
I don't
consecration
even
will be
know that they
done.
need it. I don't even know that they need a third war. They've just about accomplished it right now. They're just about there right now.
Oh, it's bad.
The
It's
state of
really
our
bad.
church at present was something that I could not even have fathomed.
Yes.
Not even a percentage of it could I have fathomed 50 years ago. I'm a
No,
priest
I
for
know.
48 years, almost 50. I'm telling you, I would never have believed we could be in such a state. Anyway,
Yeah. No,
listen,
it's sad.
you and I were going to have an hour interview, and
I know.
according to
I
my
know.
clock,
I know. So I will have to end this. But it's been so interesting. But Father, would you come back again sometime so we could talk about how the new mass was created by a Freemason, or talk about Pope Pius XII and your new book? I would love to do further interviews with you if you're able to
oh,
make the
sure,
time.
sure, absolutely,
That would be
Absolutely.
wonderful.
Sure.
And I did want to mention your new book called And It Was Night, A Tale of Betrayals. It's been released. I want to order that book. I'm really excited about it. And I think
Let
that
me
other
let me just
people,
put in a half word for that book, just real
please
quick.
do.
It is not for the faint of heart.
Oh,
Okay, no, it's not for the faint of heart. It's not about. It's not so much about Vatican treachery or anything going on, but it is a rough book because it takes place most of it in Mexico during the beginning of drug trafficking.
oh
So there's a
dear.
lot of narco violence, and some of
Mm,
the language is not so pretty. Let me put it that way, because
okay.
you're talking about hardened criminals, I mean, monsters. These are people. They didn't talk with please and thank you. You know,
Right.
they talked a certain way. So I tried to be faithful to the dialogue and everything. It's a true story, but about betrayals. But
Right.
it's not for the faint of heart. I've had some people read it and they said, I wish I hadn't read it because it's too strong. I said, okay, but I told
Mm.
you. So I just forewarn. All right.
Well, that's good. That's a good warning to have. I wish someone had given me a warning when I read Windswept House. I had such a hard time getting through the beginning of that. I'll tell you. Uh,
You
but
know that
anyway,
Malachi Martin was a friend of mine.
was he?
Yeah, he really was. Yes. Yeah. As a matter of fact, he
Oh,
was
that.
he was the one who convinced me to write this book that came out, And It Was Night. And It Was Night
Oh,
is actually about 20 years old.
oh,
It's just
very
it's just yeah,
interesting.
it just took this time for me to get it published. But
Oh,
but yes,
wow.
and he was the one
Oh,
who pushed
wow.
me to finish it, and he did much of the editing on it. Yeah,
Amazing.
it was a
Oh,
good
wow.
friend of
Well,
mine.
now I'm really intrigued. We just interviewed Rob Morrow Jr., who was
Oh,
also a
he's
friend
a
of.
great guy, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's so interesting. Oh my goodness. And I actually know Bernard Jansen from Triumph Communications who interviewed Malachi Martin. He's got a series of books on that. But anyway, he's Canadian. But I don't want to keep you too long, but I just want to tell people so they can get your books at your website,
They can go
charlesmurr.com.
to my website, which is www. I look. You were talking about being technologically challenged before we began this. Only about a year and a half ago did I finally understand or figure out that www was World Wide Web. I had no idea, right? But anyway, it's www.charlesmurr, my first and last name, charlesmurr.com. And
Excellent.
all of my books are there.
I encourage everybody to read Father's books. They're very readable too. I mean, hard to put down, really interesting, and very, very easy reads. Like it's not going to be something where it's going to be some long theological treatise that people have to be in the mood for. I mean, honest to goodness, they're
I
excellent
like the
books.
idea. I like the idea of telling stories through a novel in a
Yeah,
novel form
yeah.
rather than dry history. Yeah,
I agree. I agree. And in fact, when I homeschooled my children, I used to use a lot of historical fiction because it made history come alive. Um,
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, no, I love that style myself, Father. So thank you so much and for coming on our show today. And we will love to have you come back again in the future.
Monique,
And
we'll set it up whenever you're ready. All right.
excellent. That sounds great to me. I have to tell you, I've been more than thrilled waiting for this interview to happen. So
You're
I'm
you're
just
a very
very
you're a
flattered.
very good and easy person to talk to. Let me put it that way. It is.
Thank you, Father.
You're good.
Thank you,
You're good. You're
Father.
good. And I thank you for the opportunity and the pleasure of meeting you, and also congratulate you and the center for all the work you do. Right.
Thank you so much, Father. That means a lot to us. Thank you so much. Well, that's it for Fatima today on this show. We hope that you will all like this video, that you will share it with others, and that you will subscribe to our channel. And remember, Our Lady of Fatima has given us the only solution for the problems of our times. God bless you, everyone. Our Lady of Fatima, pray for us.